So this backroom stuff, the Ruud van Nistelrooy thing is interesting and really clever in the sense of someone actually was considered a bit too direct, and the fans didn't like seeing that in terms of the style of playing. That's why he lost his job there, despite doing all right overall.
Solid, yeah.
Scored 89 league goals, conceded 40, averaged 2.2 points.
I think they won the
per
cup.
match. They won the Dutch Cup, correct? That's right. And also just being that kind of having a little bit of legend stardust is a nice one for him to sort of come in and step in. But I think what's crucial here, again, coming back to that analogy of, what this sort of the house that is Man United that they're trying to build now, what does that look like? And is everyone aligned with what you're trying to achieve there? Mm-hmm. Having 3 Dutch people together does feel correct in terms of what he wants to do. Like Leny Yoro, 4-2-3-1 for the most part has been his managerial kind of go-to formation. Was manager of Go Ahead Eagles from July 2022 to 24. So he's only just left them. So has been a number one. Both have been number ones as well, and now become a number 2. Do you think there's any? Do you think this feels for these two like a step up, or do you think there could be? Is there a plan within a plan that if this doesn't go well, you've got a guy who's been about for a solid amount of time, in Leny Yoro, and then you've got Ruud van Nistelrooy who fits a lot of the criteria. If Ten Hag,
Ruud is an interesting one. In fact, I mean, if you believe the reports, it looked like he was set to actually become the Burnley manager. Yeah, and you asked me, is being the United assistant a step up from being the Burnley first? Without trying to offend any Burnley.
Let me explain. No. So I was seeing this myself. Like you see people go. Either leave as an assistant to go be at number 1, or sometimes do the opposite. Mm-hmm. Something I think is really important in life when you're talking to people in any relationship is like, what gets you a promotion? What is value for you? Yeah. What gets you a pay rise? Mm-hmm. What gets you to where you want to be? Yeah. Right. And so any job, generally, depending on your ambition. Is it like, look, I've managed Go Ahead Eagles and I kind of want to go manage Man United. Wow. Yeah. And I want to be assistant manager there, and I just want to be, a good team player.
For Leny Yoro, definitely. I feel like he's hit the jackpot. Ruud is the interesting one, honestly. Yeah. Like when they were linking him to Burnley, and then the United rumors came, I was like, is being United's assistant with no I don't know if there's promises in the back that, look, if it goes south with Ten Hag, you're the guy we're going to go to as interim, and maybe it turns into an Ollie situation, and then from there,
that would be so stupid for them to say that off the back.
Yeah, right? Exactly. And especially Van Nistelrooy just in the background with Ten Hag just watching him, like, yeah, okay. I'm ready to pounce on your first mistake.
Put Anthony on. No, be right, be fine. Put him left back.
I have no dog in this race whatsoever. But yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting one. I am happy to have Ruud back. I think like he obviously is a fan favorite, cult hero. The way he left United in the first place, it was a bit of a sour note the way it ended. But look, I think he's got experience, at least very recent experience, that he is a promising good young coach. And if he were to end up being the interim manager at Man United, like, I'm not going to put all my eggs in one basket and say this is the answer to all of United's problems, but it'd be interesting.
Sure, that's a very cynical way of looking at it, and I just thought it was worth airing.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely worth airing. I wouldn't be surprised if that is an idea in INEOS's head.
Or I think I was kind of thinking as much in Ruud's head.
Oh, of course,
because I think what they might be doing, like they say again, we'll come back to this phrase, best in class. Yeah, right. Yeah. If you want to do that, you want people that kind of generally have the same sensibilities, might have different opinions, but the same sensibilities, all in the same room with experience and knowledge. Mm-hmm. Now, you've got some good people there for that.
Definitely.
And the weird thing with Ruud van, if it was that cynical idea of, if I can get here, then I'm sorted. Maybe the truth is, you'll only get the job if it's you have to go somewhere else to come back.
Of course.
If that was the case, look at Kieran McKenna, right? Yeah. And that was with something that was kind of failing, and he actually had to push back against the idea of like, well, these two kids weren't really up to it.
I remember him and Carrick when they left.
Yeah, and it turns out they're both great football minds, right? With again the emotional intelligence as well, which I think it's an interesting one when it comes to Ruud van Nistelrooy, because I think people put the player and the coach to kind of together, and they're actually not the same
100%.
person. It seems like he has a very clear understanding that football players are people, and it's not like he was at Man United where the stories were where it was just like he was just pissed off if he didn't score, right?
Cristiano, are you doing 50 step overs on the way?
For the bottom of the box. So I actually think it's with the right intent there.
Yeah.
And so that kind of probably leads, certainly because the next 2 years are big, aren't they?
1,000%.
Because what you want is, I don't think you need to get there, but you want to be on your way there. That's the big thing. And so it'd be very interesting to see if Ruud van Nistelrooy can stay, those two and those three stay there for the next 2 years, things have gone great.
1,000%. Yeah. And I think I have to respect INEOS as well. I mean, I definitely have to. They are clearly trying to give Ten Hag every chance he can to be successful at this club.
That's true.
No matter what he wants, these are the guys you want as your assistants. Let's make it happen. Even if it takes probably outbidding what Burnley are going to give him as a head coach, we'll get it done for you. These are the players you want in the transfer market. We'll get it done for you. Obviously, he can't get rid of everyone that Ten Hag wants to get, but we'll do our best. I truly believe, even if in my heart, I don't really think he was their ideal manager. Like, I'm still sure in their head, if a guy becomes available as a manager tomorrow, they will go get that guy if it's their guy. But I still think they gave him that contract because they want to give him every shot to be successful. So now it's just up to him.
And I guess regardless of him, see, that's the line, isn't it? Is that you got a guy who was dead.
Yeah.
That's now, but still there.
Yeah.
So I guess you want to make the environment right, regardless of who's in that.
100%.
seat.
Yeah.
What you can't do is give him more responsibility.
If anything, they've taken responsibility off of him, which I think is a massive green flag. Honestly, whatever I think about Erik Ten Hag, right? One thing I've always been very careful to not say in the last 2 years is that I think Erik Ten Hag is a bad coach or a bad manager. I don't believe that. I think Erik Ten Hag is a very good coach.
So say the last year, because I agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the thing I was struggling with was that I need to see something.
Yeah.
And I think that's where he's got it back to front, and I think he's got that incorrect, or at least the timing of when you go, right, this is us.
Yeah.
And to get that right. But how much do you think the sort of failings of the last year are down to the environment around him, and how much are down to him? If you had to do like a split.
I want to say...
What does your gut say, and what do you want to say? There you go. Give you an out.
What do I want to say? I wanted to give... last year, if you had asked me this, I would have said a lot of blame. But it's like a three-way split for me. But like the thing is, one of the three ways also has to do with him too. For me, I'm looking at players, I'm looking at the squad, I'm looking at the manager, and I'm looking at the board. And for me, I'll never say that the players or the manager are a bigger problem than the board, because they're also byproducts of the board. So they hold the biggest percentage. He, for me, is like hand in hand with the squad. But then the issue too is that a lot of the squad were his guys. And this was always my biggest issue of Erik Ten Hag, right? And it's why, for me, I'm very happy that INEOS, one of their first steps, okay, if you want to stay with us and you want to continue being United manager, you are completely going to be removed of these responsibilities in terms of recruiting talent. Because I think, again, like I said, I never said he was a bad coach. I think he's a very talented coach. But he has a rotten talent ID, in my opinion. Like, his talent ID for signing players and scouting and identifying players that was the biggest issue I had with him. You can know the way you want to play, but at the end of the day, if you're signing the wrong players, your game plan is never going to work out. And I really think, like, it's crazy too, because some of his worst signings were players that he actually bought. A guy like Antony, which was his record signing at United, has been awful.
Stinking.
And it would never happen under any competent kind of recruitment staff, ever. So realistically, you should be signing players for the club. You really shouldn't be signing players directly for a manager, because especially in a situation like Ten Hag, you don't know if he's going to be here a year, 2 years, 3 years. You should be signing club players that follow a club identity, and the manager you bring in should be also adjacent with that identity as well too, and it all kind of fits into one big puzzle. And the biggest issue of United is that every 2-3 years you have a new manager, but the manager is the one signing the players for his project. But if a manager is leaving every 2-3 years, you got players from that project, this project, this project, this project, and bear in mind, they're all on 150, 200K. So once that manager goes, you're not taking the players with you. They're still staying there.
Yeah, I can't remember who it was, but they always say, like, the first thing you should never allow a new manager to do is buy their own players.
Yeah.
For exactly what you've said there. And the other thing I think is about the sort of a manager being there 6, 7, 8 years, right? Let's go back to start of the Premier League, 1992, 93. I want to say 2 subs.
Yeah.
Right? So 13 players.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to have a squad of 18?
That's so crazy to think about now. That's so crazy to think about. That's a match day squad now.
So if you're making those changes, it's like one guy in, one guy out. It's so much more manageable. That's what I think, that the bandwidth thing is a huge thing here. Yeah. So when it now becomes one where you're aiming to, if you're aiming to stay the 6-7 years, how many players are you going to get through? 100 at least. Yeah. Probably more.
You look at the amount of players United have signed post-Fergie, it's a crazy amount.
Exactly. And so it has to be done correctly, and it has to be done with that sort of idea in place. And that, again, is why, look, you can be excited if you're Man United.
Of course, yeah. You have to be.
Because it's logical. Yeah. And I don't think that word's ever been sexier for a Man United fan, right?
I love it. Say it again.
Logical.
Wow.
The other thing that's crucial here, clarity. Here's another one for you. Logical, clarity, accountability. Yeah. And the idea that if the training ground, those things need to be sorted out, who do we go to? We go to Dan, don't you? It's Dan. Okay, we quite like this player. Yeah. Who should we go to? Well, that's Omar, isn't it? Yeah. And the thing with Omar, you have Omar Berardi, the chief executive, they take from Man City. If you need to know if you're going to pay a bit too much on someone, you need to have someone whose whole job is that. Yeah. I know it sounds like I'm saying something insightful. No,
not. Honestly, this is black and white. This is as obvious
right?
as you can play FIFA career mode, and it seems obvious.
But that's with like the Anthony and the Casemiro signings. Those ones, it's like, we could do with him. Well, he costs way too much, and he's a bit too old. Yeah, but we need a midfielder now. Okay, we'll offer a little bit more. Whereas Barada will just walk off and go find another one, and go find an 18-year-old. Yeah. Who's not there, might not be there yet, but is very likely to be one. Yep. And then Jason Wilcox, who's coming as the technical director. Some of the older listeners will remember him as Blackburn's winger at one point. Stuart Ripley on the other side. Anyway, it was previously Southampton's director of football. Before that, he was an academy coach at Man City, where he worked under Barada as well. Man United also have Darren Fletcher as a technical director, but his role is more focused on establishing pathways into the first team, which is great to hear for the club's young players. Fletcher's job title will probably change soon if it hasn't already. So again, with Wilcox, it's then one where Barada doesn't need... He can go and talk to Wilcox and go, okay, we're going to bring in this player. We're going to try and need a space for him. How do we get a pathway for him to get to... It's all just passed along one by one. It's so simple.
And you know what? The funniest thing for me is that, like, again, what we're saying here is not... Like, this is how every successful football club for the last 10 years has been run. Like, Manchester City listeners will be listening to this and saying... Well, it's about damn time. Like Arsenal for the last few years will be no, of course. But for United fans, honestly, like this is like a new phenomenon. Like, and this is why we kind of opened up the show saying like, how excited can we be? We should be excited, but like, it's about damn time. Busquets, for example, my good friend, I think his phone cover right now is actually like Brailsford, Radcliffe, Barada, Ashworth. Like, we're talking about these guys like the Avengers, man. We're talking about these guys like they're the new summer signings. Yeah. It's funny. It's a good time. It's an exciting time to be a United fan. I wouldn't say good yet because we need to see the results kind of.
There's a rejuvenation there for sure, and the ripping up. I think, look, we watch football to watch the football,
right?
But the sort of drip down effect of what's sorted out above that is everything. It is. It clearly is. Because the other thing as well, really interesting, Harry Brooks sat in the seat you're in last week. He's a coach, works one-on-one with some great players. And he said the presentation that people put to people now is huge in terms of a player signing for that club. And so the Yoro signing, or these players that are going to be able to go, well, no, those guys aren't there anymore. We've got the best this, best that. We're changing the training ground. We're doing all these things. I've seen something about even just the tunnel. They're going to change that. Yeah. And these little things, those 1% gains that Brailsford spoke about.
Thing. Yeah,
that's very clever.
1,000%.
Because those, if you go look, just come to the ground, and you have that sorted out, and you have them walking out of something that doesn't look, decrepit. It looks like exciting. So all those little things will be the difference between getting Yoro and not getting Yoro.
100%. I even look back at like the last few players that United have tried signing and even brought to the club, and I think Bellingham was the big one, right? When they brought out they brought out Sir Alex, and I think they even brought out Eric Cantona.
I think he might be there.
I don't think it was. I think it might have been Robson and Eric Cantona, right? I think those were the two. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. But I'm just thinking to myself, okay, Eric Cantona is unreal. If you're a Man United fan, you know what this is about. But what does Jude Bellingham know about Brian Robson or Eric Cantona? To be fair to Jude, he talks like he's a student of the game. I hear that 100%.
Sure.
But for a
it's
young
the
kid,
past.
yeah, 1,000%. What I'm gonna say, some people might disagree with, but I actually think when I read at the Athletic how much Rio Ferdinand had a role in bringing Leny Yoro to the club in terms of speaking to him, that's a guy, in my opinion, that when Leny Yoro was growing up, probably watched him, plays in this position, is a legend of the game, probably can relate to him a whole lot more than, I'm sorry, Jude Bellingham can relate to Brian Robson. It's a totally different world. So I think, like you said, it might seem so minuscule what I've just said, but those are those 1% gains that I actually think go a long way in terms of actually helping recruit talent.
So 62 million has been spent overall. So you've got about 40 mil left, but you need to obviously sell a few, but you have sold a few. So let's run through a few and get your thoughts on it. Joshua Zirkzee, if you really want to give it the Dutch way of doing it, apparently. 35 mil. Can they play both Zirkzee and Hojlund together? Zirkzee is a forward. There's a video on the channel if you want to go check that out, talking about him and his style of play.
Very talented player.
Really talented player. Really excited to see him play. I think he's going to be one of those ones where I think he's going to be a real fan's favourite. Great feet, great ability to keep the ball, find solutions, hold up the ball, bring other players into play as well. He's been kind of likened to a few different people. We on the video we did, there was some people talking he had like a Weghorst vibe, and then other people saying that he had a Ronaldinho vibe.
Wow.
Now, and again, if you watch the video, you'll understand why those both were sort of put together, because I guess he's a centre forward.
What is a mix of Ronaldinho and Weghorst? Where is the balance between them?
I think it's like where does he stand on the pitch was the Weghorst bit, as in he's a centre forward, and he's probably a bit more like a slightly thicker Firmino. I think
that's not the worst shout.
But the skill set and the dribbling, that's the Ronaldinho element of it, and you do see it. His gait is a little like, when I say it, I'm not saying he's as good as him. He's obviously not. Yeah. But in terms of his sort of the way he sort of dribbles with the ball and the way his gait is a little bit similar to it, which again is going to get Man United fans excited.
Yeah, guys, we signed Ronaldinho up front. Get excited.
The next, so he didn't play for Holland, kind of because he was sort of in Memphis Depay, so sort of well trodden in that team that he wasn't going anywhere.
And Weghorst is first man off.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why he wasn't playing. But I remember talking to some Dutch fans, and they were kind of like, I don't understand why he's not
my friend Fuad was saying the exact same thing.
Right.
Obviously, he's Dutch. He was saying, he should be playing more.
Do you see him as the main man, and what does that mean for Hojlund?
That's my biggest question mark with this signing, right? I made a video on this myself. I like Zirkzee as a player. I watched him a bit for Bologna. Very talented player. I think the price is excellent value for money. I think for 35 million to get a guy like that, of that age, that profile, it's a brilliant signing. I don't know how United line up with him next year. That's a good point, because you're not Bologna. Yeah. And I don't think Ten Hag wants to be Bologna. No. And I think the question you asked, can he play up front with Hojlund? Ten Hag has indicated that he can play anywhere amongst the front three. But as far as I've seen Zirkzee, he's a central player. He's a number 9. Like, okay, he can drop deep and occupy number 10 positions, but you're not starting him on the right. You're not starting him on the left, as far as I know. As far as I've seen Zirkzee.
Stay within the penalty box.
Right, exactly. And he can drop deep. Of course, he can do that. I don't think United are going to play 4-4-2 next season. I'm very convinced in saying that. I don't think that's the direction they're going to go towards. And it just leaves me puzzled, right? I hear a lot of talk about depth when it comes from United fans. Like, oh, it's good to have depth. But as long as I've been watching football, center forward for me is the position that if you have a guy up front firing goals, you're not rotating that guy. Every game, I'll take City, because City is the main example people want to use to kind of back the Zirkzee point. Well, City have Alvarez and Haaland. But Alvarez is not Haaland's backup, if you really think about it. If Haaland is fit, Haaland plays every single game and almost every single minute for City, unless it's a blowout. Alvarez, if anything, is sharing time with on the left, last season in number 10 position, sometimes on the right. If your number 9 is firing in goals, he's your guy. You don't drop him because you don't want to ruin his rhythm and you want him to score goals. The problem with United, right, is I don't know if either of those two are like your main men. Hojlund is a fascinating prospect, a very, very good athlete, has shown you flashes, but I think last year in the Euros was a very clear indication that he's not ready yet. And in Zirkzee, I think he's a very talented player, but again, is there any indication that Zirkzee is ready right now to lead the line for 38 games a season at United? I was thinking with Hojlund last year, maybe we need a more senior statesman, a guy who can kind of like take the burden off him, allow him to continue developing, still share time with him, but somebody that's happy not to play 38 games a season, can lead the line, can do the dirty work, and allow Hojlund to develop a bit more quietly. So with the Zirkzee thing, I feel like it's going to be great if one of them is firing at the same time. If one of them is firing and the other's not. Great, we play the one that's firing. But what if neither of them are firing? What if neither of them are doing well? Then what?
The other problem I have is if you take one off for the other one, you have to play differently.
Oh, 100% differently. Hojlund is
The
a transition
profiles are
player.
so different.
Yeah, Zirkzee is a guy who he's in love with the ball. He wants to drop deep. He wants to get involved. He wants to link up with players. Hojlund is a guy that wants to play on the last line. He wants to run behind. He wants to get in physical battles.
And here come the questions.
Yeah.
So like we get right. If you're a Man United fan, the sexy bit's over now.
Yeah.
This is the bit where I'm still like that in terms of what do we still need to see?
Right.
That's the one thing I think with Zirkzee. Get him. I get it. And, are you now going to play 4-2-2-2?
I would be massively surprised if he plays 4-2-2.
Because you've got Garnacho.
Yeah.
And you've got Rashford you're going to need to get in there.
But that's the thing, right? I feel like another thing, too, is these guys need different kinds of surroundings to thrive. Zirkzee, you ideally want to surround him with runners. You want to surround him with a Rashford, with a Garnacho. Guys that, if he drops deep, you have guys making runs. He's a terrific playmaker. With Hojlund, if you have a front three of Hojlund, Rashford, and Garnacho, you're not retaining much of the ball. Neither of these guys are really like their main role on a football pitch is to keep the ball. They want to be running in behind. They want to be going at goal. So maybe with a Hojlund, you want an Ahmad. If Jadon Sancho is the same, maybe you want a Sancho. If you get a guy like Xavi Simons, you want to play those kinds of guys around a Hojlund. So it's very interesting, right? Honestly, obviously, I'm just a fan. I'm just the guy who watches the game and says what I see. So that's up to the coaching staff and the board, obviously, to make that vision real. But as far as I can see, I struggle really, at least at the start, seeing how they're going to be deployed.
That's what if there's anyone I want to watch over pre-season, it's Man United.
The first game of the season, who is Erik Ten Hag starting out of the two? Your guess is as good as mine.
I think I would guess that.
And you know what's sorry, one last thing. If you believe the reports, United are still going after another striker. They're linking them very heavily to Ivan Toney, which makes me think: is there actually truth to the thing that Ten Hag is saying about he envisions Zirkzee playing across the front three? Because you're not going to have 3 starting center forwards. You're not going to have 3 first-choice center forwards. One of them is going to have to play in a different role.
Yeah, I really need to see that.
It's an interesting one.
But
I stress, I love the player. I love the profile. And I think in isolation, great signing. I'm just confused about the execution.
That's it. And I think that's the stumbling block. And this is where I keep coming back to Ten Hag. Is the fact that I need to see it now. Leny Yoro, 52 million.
This one's
likely
exciting.
play right-sided centre-back next to Lisandro Martinez. Does this mean Man United are now more capable of playing out from the back? Both of them are great in possession and are fairly athletic, meaning a higher line could be viable. Yoro is good, but still figuring out his body somewhat.
True.
He's a bit of a daddy long legs. So patience will be the key. Will he be given this patience by the fans?
I think so. I think fans will be understanding of an 18-year-old. I think United, typically they're good with their young players. I think he'll be okay.
Does he start the first game? Is he one of the two?
It depends. First of all, how good is he in preseason? I think that's going to be a massive test. Like, how quickly can he develop that partnership with Sandro Martinez? And I think it also depends, too, does United get a second center back over the line? Do they manage to get Matthijs de Ligt? Because if maybe he comes in, then Leny Yoro has a bit more time and a bit more kind of like a safety net to develop in the background, and you can ease him in a bit better. But if not, then he's a talented player. That's no question about it. I don't think anyone can really debate that. So I think it really depends. I think the bigger question is, will he start in the Community Shield against City? I think that's the big one right there. And I think if he does, then yeah, why not?
It's tough, isn't it? Because I think there's such a balance between protecting him. He's 18.
Yeah, he's a kid.
He's a child.
Yeah.
And he's really good. He is really, really good. But and we, on the channel, we said that United should get him quite some time ago. But I think again, it's all about the grey area. And the one thing I want him to go and thrive. I'm slightly concerned that, say, you come back to that Rio Ferdinand thing.
Yeah.
Rio Ferdinand's 21, maybe older. I'm guessing. He's not. If you took Rio Ferdinand, West Ham Rio Ferdinand, and put him in the Man United team, I'd love to ask Rio Ferdinand that question. If you ever get a chance, ask him for me. Would you, if you'd gone from West Ham to Man United and started, do you think it would have been all right? I
Maybe
think
not. Yeah.
I think that leads to
It's like
questions.
a trial by fire, right? Like, and that's United loves doing that. By the way, we love throwing in these young players into this trial by fire, and if they come out, then it's like Kobe, for example. We threw him into the deep end. We threw Marcus Rashford into the deep end.
Yeah.
Martial, we threw him into the deep end first game against Liverpool. And when they thrive, the issue is, okay, it's brilliant. We're all so high on them, but then the expectation is there, and if they when it shouldn't even be an if, they're young kids. When they inevitably have that stumbling block, it's like, oh, maybe he's not good enough. But the reality is these guys need time to develop. A guy like Rico Lewis, a guy like Phil Foden at City, they have the chance to develop with patience. They don't have to start every single game. They don't have to be the savior every single game.
And this comes back to Ten Hag again, because it's like, if you're like, oh, no, I want to play a high line and I want to play the way I want to play.
Yeah.
Then you don't let Maguire do it for a bit or Lindelof do it for a bit.
Yeah.
You just go and put him in there. And do you know what I do like about him is he's quite a quiet footballer, if that makes sense. He's like, he won't sort of try these like outrageous passes or drive with the ball outrageously. He'll play the simple pass, like quite quietly. So I think it'd be one that, and I love players who can, back to Rio Ferdinand again, or Varane at his best, like the ability to walk through.
Yeah.
Love players.
Yoro has that trait as well too.
Yeah, I think he does. And again, for an 18-year-old, it's crazy. Like, and he doesn't look, he's so skinny. He needs to put on some muscle and some
but
weight
he's
there.
so long, man. Honestly, like that's the first thing I noticed about him. Like, he's with Lisandro, right? Lisandro is probably my favorite player at the club. I absolutely love the guy. But as every player does, he has weaknesses. And one thing for me is like how short his legs are. People talk about how short he is. That's not for me the issue. It's how short his legs are. Right. And I think at times too, when there's space in behind that he needs to basically cover ground, he's not able to do it as well as a Konate or a Saliba. These guys are giants. When he's kind of in those wider areas, like again, he struggles a little bit. And I think as well too, to be fair, he does quite well in the close duels, which is something that surprised me. I always thought, in the box, maybe his height is going to be an issue, but he's actually an excellent box defender. But one thing with Lisandro maybe is that if you get a little too close tight, he's gonna gamble a little bit. And sometimes he'll win it, but also someone will be able to spin him, and then you got room to go. With Yoro, he's almost able to cheat because of how long his legs are. You can position yourself excellently back to the defender, get the ball in front of you, and you're in front of the ball. But his legs are so long that he's almost able to just wrap it around you and still get the ball, no matter how well you position yourself. It's like a cheat code.
Yeah, he's good, and he's quite. I think sometimes you go, oh, he's like He's not a proper defender. He's he's the graceful one.
Yeah.
Or he's just like he's a dog.
Yeah.
He's got that tenacity that you kind of want to see for someone as slight as him. But again, the questions I have here, one is we're talking, so obviously the podcast is called The Ripple Effect. I think the ripple effect of getting De Ligt in there just to take that little bit of pressure off him and go and put him in regularly. Let him have 20 odd games, 30 odd games. You've got Europa League, right? So giving him the space to kind of grow in those areas.
I think it'd be irresponsible if they gave him if Leny Yoro played 38 games this season. I think it'd be very irresponsible.
Yeah, if you're playing 3 games a week.
Yeah, that's irresponsible. Yeah,
it's dangerous.
Especially for a kid like you said, he's growing into his body. Yeah,
definitely. But a lot of the things you want, and again, getting him at 18, when PSG and Real Madrid, it seemed very clear that those were the 2 teams that he was going to go to. It's a monster of a signing.
Yeah, no, it's a massive statement signing.
But it's not about next season, is it?
No. This is for me, when we talk about club signings, this is a cornerstone for Man United. This should be a guy that no matter if Ten Hag gets fired tomorrow, for example, the next manager is coming in. He's looking at the squad available to him and how he can build his project. You have a guy there that it doesn't matter who you want. He is the guy at center back that you're building around. He's the cornerstone for Man United for the foreseeable future, for as long as you have him.
Yeah.
And like you said, to get over Real Madrid, obviously, look, I'm not trying to say here United were more of a draw than Real Madrid. Obviously, they offered a bit more money, but to show the ambition to even do that and not even let it get to next summer where he'd go for free, massive credit.
But when when they're 18, he can have 8 years and he's 26.
Yeah.
You're still selling for God knows what.
No, 100%, right.
So you're going to get your money back from that point of view.
I think that's one thing, obviously, like you said, rival fans are looking at this in the most pessimistic way possible. And it's like, oh, does he even want to be there? He's just going to leave for Real Madrid in 3 years. Well, Leny Yoro signed for 5 years with an option to extend for a 6th. So in 3 years, Man United are struggling and Real Madrid want to go sign Leny Yoro. They're coming in for close to 100 million because he still has 3 years left on his deal.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And he's not even hit his peak yet.
And that's worst case scenario if it doesn't work out. If we're good, then we're Man United.
And this idea that you spent like 12 million more.
Yeah.
Like, you're never going to think about that ever again.
100%. That's what I'm saying. Like, Ben White went for 50 million a few years ago. No one ever talks about his price tag because he was a brilliant signing. Yeah. If Leny Yoro ends up being a brilliant signing, you think anyone's going to talk about in 3 years, we spent £52 million on an 18-year-old? No, it's actually going to probably be looked at as a bargain.
It's a great example. Varane and Yoro. Got a guy the wrong side of Madrid, and you got a guy the right side of Madrid. That is as simple as that.
Right.
Okay, so with this, and the left back position, I think is still a huge concern. I think that needs sorting out. Maybe another centre midfielder. Amrabat, is he going to definitely?
I think they definitely need another midfielder for
yeah.
sure.
I'll give you some options in terms of the transfers that have been rumoured, and you're only allowed one. Okay.
Okay.
So is it A? Manuel Ugarte, 23 years old. Market value according to Transfer Market, they're generally quite sensible guys, so don't get angry. 37 mil. Only signed for PSG from Sporting last season for around 50 mil, but PSG might take an offer close to his market value as he hasn't been that significant for them since signing, and they've got a lot of good options in midfield. A good ball-winning, holding midfielder, solid passing range, real tenacity about him, kind of the bite that Man United need. He's not the biggest, and I do think that is a bit of a problem for Man United.
A small midfield.
Quite a small team, but alongside Manu could be really, really good fun because he kind of has some of the other elements that Manu maybe not doesn't outwardly show, if that makes sense. He's more about composure. Martin Zubimendi,
good player,
25, market value player. 42 million pounds. So differences here. You got your holding midfielder who again has that maybe that bit of tenacity, can be part of a double pivot, or maybe an 8 that goes out and gets the ball back. Or you could have more of a tempo controlled midfielder in Zubimendi, which means slight change of style in comparison to Ugarte. Contract till 2027. Might cost more than Ugarte unless Sociedad want the cash in this summer. Yeah. Sociedad finished 6th last season, securing Europa League football. They might want to sell and reinvest in the squad. Or option number 3 for midfield. You got Xavi Simons, 21. Market value 67 million. It's quite strange that PSG have never given him a chance at the club.
Nah, never.
Loan at PSV 2 seasons ago. Last season, he was at Leipzig, one of the best players. Bit of a nearly man for the Netherlands this tournament, but did score the screamer, didn't he, of course? Scored 8 goals and got 11 assists in Bundesliga last season, playing as a left-sided 10.
Yeah.
And then the last one was Kadioglu that we were talking about in that left-back position. So again, if you want to go check out my video, you can do. He's played in like 10 different positions at this point. It's crazy, but
he's got to be good in one of them.
but mostly has played as a right-footed left back, which sounds scary, but again, tenacious, great vision, and is willing to run in behind. So isn't like that Trippier one who's just going to come back. He's a lot more attacking. So what if you can only buy one? Which one would you want?
I got question marks over all three of Kadioglu. I'm gonna put in a different category. Just look at the first 3. I have question marks over all 3 of them, to be honest with you, man. Xavi Simons, I'll start off with him. Very talented player, but I'm just kind of wondering, what does he bring that we don't already possess in Bruno and Mount? Honestly, that's my biggest issue. Like when I look at Xavi Simons, very technical player, very good in tight spaces, has a nice eye for a pass, has an eye for a goal.
Good movement, yeah.
Good movement. Isn't the most explosive, isn't going to be like carrying the ball forward crazy yards, isn't going to be just taking on players for fun. He reminds me a lot of Bruno, to be honest with you. Obviously, it's not the same player, but like, what does he really bring to us that Bruno currently isn't already? And as far as I'm concerned, love him or hate him, Bruno is here to stay. Like, he is probably one of the first names on the team sheet. So, and especially too, a guy like Mason Mount, who we talk about signings, he is effectively like a new signing. It's this year will really be like, how does he kind of fit into the equation? And I'm still not sure where he fits into United's starting 11 when all is said and done. So Xavi Simons, like it'd be a nice opportunity, right? He's probably going to come on loan. It's like an experiment. It's almost like when we loaned in Falcao for a year, and it's like, okay, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If we get the best version of Falcao, we have Falcao. So it's a weird one with Xavi Simons. I'd be willing to try it out. But I'm just not sure where he fits. I really don't know.
I agree with you. I think he's a bit of a nearly man.
Yeah.
And I think he could turn into like an Odegaard guy.
Maybe.
Do you remember?
True.
Do you remember when Odegaard was like, is he Freddie Adu?
Yeah.
He's like, it's not.
That's true. Yeah, he just
got
the right home. Yeah,
and then it started to click. I think he was at somewhere before Arsenal.
Sociedad, yeah.
That's it. And then went to Arsenal, was obviously, and has just gone, through.
That's true. It's true.
And at 21, now's the time where he goes, bosh.
Yeah, it's true. I say he's similar to Fernandez,
well.
but he's 21 years old, so this isn't the finished article. That's a good point. I look at the other ones, right?
The other thing, sorry, I'll just say is,
do
you really want to give up on Mount just yet? That's why I would say no to this.
Even if you don't want to, I don't have much of a choice. Like I like Mount, so I'm not saying I would. But even if you were realistically saying, "Oh, Mount should not be of United," they bought him a year ago. He's here for 3-4 more years. Like you can't just give up. It's like Hojlund. You can't just give up on him.
Yeah.
You have to give him more time. And putting another player in that kind of position for him to contest with, I don't think it makes much sense for the squad dynamics. Zubimendi is a really talented player, and I think before Kobbie Mainoo's kind of emergence in that role, I would have been all over it. It's a bit similar to Frankie. Obviously, I think Frankie is a bit better at carrying the ball forward. Zubimendi is a bit more of like a pass-first kind of player. But for me, they're both players that are probably at their best in like a deeper position next to a destroyer. And that's probably where United envisions Kobbie Mainoo for now. And does Mainoo and Zubimendi kind of work? Like, I feel like if you were to sign Ugarte and Zubimendi, maybe you got something going on there. But I don't know if Zubimendi again has a natural fit in United's midfield. Like, is Zubimendi, Mainoo, and Bruno Fernandes, or Zubimendi, Mainoo, and Mount? Can that compete with Declan Rice, Martin Odegaard, Rodri, Bernard? Like, physically, I think that's like you said, United has a huge issue physically. I don't know if Zubimendi kind of fixes that issue in midfield. Terrific player, but I don't know about the fit. And then Ugarte is the final one, right? I think this is another one. It's an opportunity signing, right? He's going to come in on a cheap. Not in favor at PSG. He is a good player as well too. He showed at Sporting. He's shown it for Uruguay. But a big issue I see of United, and it was one thing I disagreed with you when I saw the brief, right? A big issue of United in the last year is how much space they kind of give up in midfield. Like there have been stills from last year, if you kind of freeze frame the game, where there's just a massive hole because the center backs don't press high. The fullbacks press high. And then the midfield and forward line also presses high. So you're almost left with like a massive hole in midfield. And it's also why... Exactly. And as bad as Casemiro has kind of declined, he also wasn't helped by that situation. Great. He's never been a guy who covers ground exceptionally well. Ugarte, I think, is a really good player, very tenacious, good again in small areas winning the ball back. But I think asking an Ugarte to cover that amount of ground is potentially suicidal. I like, as nice as I can put it.
In what way? You don't think he's got the legs?
I don't think he does. I don't think he has the legs to cover that much ground. I think, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I think you have to have like a Declan Rice kind of player to cover that much ground that United give up.
I would. I think he's got an incredible engine on him.
Definitely.
What I think it's a different kind of question. It's funny you bring that up because me and Kai had this conversation this morning. Is it like the Ten Hag thing about it all working and everyone just going?
Yeah.
If you can get away with that, and it's like going forward, you're so good that you're overpowering, and then the opposition is going, okay, well, hang on, we need one more back now, and then you've got less bodies to get forward.
Yeah.
Then it all starts to work a little bit. So I think for Man United that we saw last year, if he's going to stick with that in terms of, like you say, like evacuating that midfield, then I don't, you're going to have problems regardless unless you're so good going forward. And that's where if he's absolutely going to do that, you maybe you let Kobbie Mainoo be that guy further forward. Maybe Ugarte's there.
You know what it is, right? And it just kind of hit me now. The biggest reason why I have so many question marks about so many of these signings isn't, again, because they're bad players or I don't think they can work at United, but really it all comes down to nobody really has a 100% idea of how United are going to play next year. That's the reality. Yeah. Like, if we knew how United play week in, week out, then we can start saying, okay, Ugarte can play in this role. Like, if, for example, the first season under Ten Hag, and then probably the closing weeks where Ten Hag started becoming a bit more pragmatic against City, how close everybody kind of was, then I can see an Ugarte playing in there. Yeah. If that's the way United are going to go into next season, we're going to be a bit more pragmatic, we're going to play a bit, like I said, drop deep, counterattack, then absolutely, you throw an Ugarte in there with Mainoo, I think we got a great formula there. But it really just depends. What is Ten Hag's philosophy? Because if it's the first half of the season where it was just basically any midfield can shred through us, I feel sorry for anybody we get, to be honest with you.
That's it. Exactly. Well put. And that's it. It's both that question of what are we going to see, how are you going to look to play, and then also who is going to line up? Because you've got a lot of players there that got injured last season, and that needs to be kind of figured out as well. So to wrap up, certainly promise.
Definitely, of course.
And I think the seeds of a starting point. Oh no, certainly a starting point in terms of the structure. Long way to go, though. Oh,
for sure. It won't be solved this year, guys. This is a message to all United fans. We will not be the finished article next season. That is 1,000% for sure. But I think the most important thing is just seeing the building blocks there. Like that's all. That for me is the bare minimum. Let me see the seeds of an identity. They don't even have to be. They don't even have to rise this summer. Just let me see the seeds.
Yeah, I totally agree. Do you know what I keep thinking it is? And again, people don't like it when I say this. If I was a Man United fan, I'd be really happy if I saw a bit like Spurs last season, where they came out. Wow, 10. Right, okay. Oh, no, I get it. I got it. Oh no, we've got. Luke Shaw's got injured. Fuck, we're gonna have to move it about now. Oh, he's got injured now because we've got Europa League and all these games. Right, we're gonna have to sort of wiggle it about a bit now because the squad's not totally where we want to be yet. We've got players from 3 different managers.
Right.
That's fine.
1000%.
That's fine.
I know. Honestly, I kept saying that last season as well too. I was Ange's biggest fan last year, and they ended up completely collapsing. But I love the way he went about it.
Yeah, and I guess that's the thing is, people will turn and going back to right at the start. How do you feel as a Man United fan?
Yeah.
If you go back to sort of Man United and then thinking about Spurs, there will be a sort of not a snobbery. I think maybe to a point of like, hang on, Spurs don't win things, we win things, right? Tottenham finished on. Oh wow, it was only 6 points.
They didn't finish that much higher than us.
Yeah. My point, Tottenham.
Yeah. Oh, you were gonna say like, oh, it's like Galaxy's way. No, Spurs didn't finish that far.
Maybe you can find a point within this.
Yeah.
So actually, they were only 6 points ahead of you in the end, which is crazy.
But in terms of the way they played, in terms of like it was just galaxies apart. Like I think Spurs' collapse and United's last few games where they kind of started picking up some points. I think that was ultimate. Like the way Spurs collapsed last year was like historic. Honestly, they went 4 games I think without a win. But
I guess essentially, I can find a point here. We'll cut this together. The point is, so you're only 6 points off them, and you've had a disaster that you've had.
Yeah.
Or what it feels like, right?
I was a disaster.
So it is. That is a thing especially for the top teams. It's kind of how you do it a little bit.
Yeah,
still,
definitely.
57 goals scored, 58 conceded.
That's awful.
74 goals scored, 61 conceded for Tottenham.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's sort of an element of flourish is what you're after, isn't it? Interesting.
Definitely.